Hello, everybody. Good morning. I'm here today to talk about the creative process. So I've written a Bible. First, I just want to say some quick things about my latest album, Demand the Impossible. It was a record that I was working for in like 2 years, struggling, slow, quick sometimes, but it took me some time to actually um, have it finished. For that album, Demand the Impossible, I created a persona, which I call the street prophet. And the street prophet is the person you can see in the middle of the street in almost any city of the world, shouting out the wildest ideas about society and the whole universe. Preaching, screaming, scolding. It's usually the lunatic of the town, a person who stepped aside from the rest of the community. I'm going to look in my papers because I'm reading the Bible right now, okay? And because of that, she is the perfect criticizer of the normal world. The street prophet can actually see through the standards and therefore tell the crazy truth. And this made me want to speak through the body of a street prophet, which I did on Demand the Impossible. Anyway, I'm not here to talk about the street prophet or Demand the Impossible. Today I would like to talk about the craftsmanship behind new ideas being born, or what we usually call the creative process. But to describe this stage, I first need to dissect it. So let's start with the prefix creative, which indicates the positive flow of being innovative, productive, visionary. The word creative simply seems to hold the positive aspects of creating, right? Meanwhile, the word process is revealing the more difficult, struggling part of it. And this is where I want to start today, by the struggling part of creating, the process. Well, how does the process start? For me, out of complete emptiness. I know it sounds weird, but that's how it feels for me. The process starts as an impulse that hasn't even become an idea yet. My head feels terribly hollow, like a damn balloon or something. My body feels stiff. I'm like a dancer in a cast. Or dry as a desert where nothing ever grows. That's how I feel. My mind is a house where every single window is covered with blinders. Or to say it out clear, my intellect is temporarily shut down, and this is where it begins for me, the process, in emptiness. Isn't it strange? It always shows up here in the very feeling of being hopelessly stupid and useless. But what if this stupidity or empty-headed feeling is nothing but an early stage of creativity? Maybe it's necessary to be hollow, to at all be able to catch the very signs, the very first signs of inspiration. Maybe you have to be hollow to catch the first signs of inspiration. Because somewhere right there, in the vacant space of my brain, I hear it coming, the inspiration. Whether I'm ready for it or not, I hear it. I don't necessarily understand it, but still it's there, and I feel it. It's like a faraway sound, smooth as a ghost, but persistent as a telephone signal. It's like ring, ring, ring. It can be incredibly difficult to locate where it comes from, the signals. But I feel it in my entire system. Like a dull pain, a dull pain. It's just, you just can put the finger on the pain. When you try to point it out, it always moves to another spot. And when you try to follow it, the pain is on hold, waiting. and then it returns just to disappear again. Elusive and annoying. If you've experienced that, then you know how it feels to be in the early stage of inspiration. Annoying. Because it's so elusive. Just like this phone that disturbingly keeps calling over and over again. I know it must be pretty urgent now, but still there is something in me that doesn't really want to pick it up. I feel terribly lazy and tired and empty-headed, for sure. Ring. 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 Is it calling for me? Ring. Ring, ring. Am I supposed to pick up? I know if I pick up, I know I have to work very hard for a very long time. So for a while I'm struggling against the impulse to answer, it's like, oh. Ring, ring. Shouldn't I just keep the blinders down and plug in the earplugs? Ring, ring. Where is that goddamn phone anyway? Or is it at all a phone? Maybe it's just the ringing in my head. Am I crazy? Ring, ring. Who the heck is calling? I better find that damn phone. Well, yeah. That's the question. Who's calling? Where does these impulses come from? Where does the inspiral force come from? Is it the unconsciousness that tries to make itself heard? Maybe. That could explain why the first signs of inspiration always seems vague and vaporizing as a dream. Or is it the result of all my experiences that I've collected during my life and which is now trying to get out of my system? Maybe. It's easy to talk about inspiration in metaphors, but difficult to really explain what it is. But when I at last have picked up that damn phone, when I have started to listen to the noisy whispers in the receiver, and to the scratching sound in there, it starts to generate pictures, and visions, and ideas, and thoughts, and I'm curious. And that is simply wonderful. And this is where I start feeling alive and sparkling again, and sharp and full of wisdom. This is where the creativity kicks in. And this is also where the collecting part of the work begins. I collect pictures, poems, instruments, melodies, quotes, and sounds. And when I worked with my latest album, Demand the Impossible, I collected sounds from the street. I was taping it, recording it. So I recorded hours of people walking, talking, demonstrating, lunatics yelling, the hissing and clattering of the subway train, street musician playing, beggars begging, the traffic, the dry wind, it says here. Yeah, because I somehow knew that this would make some sense later on in the process. Well, and I collect words. Suddenly just pops out a whole new vocabulary, and I write it down on any paper I can reach, and I collect, and I collect, and I collect. I would like to read some notes that I found in the diary I was writing during the work with Demand the Impossible. It says, yesterday I listened to the radio. It was a very interesting interview with a Parisian guy who makes perfumes. He described how he collects thoughts, memories, feelings, and different worlds. And then he fantasizes around all this until he can make a clear picture of how that scent would smell. Then he walks to his laboratory and try to compose this scent that holds that picture and feeling. He tried to compose the scent that can tell the story he wants to tell. And I wrote, okay, this completely reminds me of how I am working right now. I'm walking around doing this quite abstract collecting memories, pictures, feelings that all together makes a world of its own. A world that at first I don't have the access to. Not until I have spent a lot of time in my own laboratory, where I put together the fragments to a structure and to an organism, to a universe of my own. Then all of a sudden I do not only have the access to that world and all the streets and alleyways and shortcuts and tunnels and tracks there, I now also know all the rules, all the subcultures. I know the dangerous parts as good as I know the good parts. I easily find my way without a map, and I speak the language fluidly. I'm talking about my projects. I'm not talking about a real city. So I'm talking about my Demand the Impossible record as the city I'm about to build. And I'm continuing here. And I am beginning to be a full and true citizen of my new album now. Notes from my diary. Okay. Oh yeah, that's what I thought. I always think that I'm more ready than I am. So maybe I was a true citizen of my own work as I wrote. But if I only knew how much struggle that poor citizen had left. Struggle, confusion, and doubts. Because suddenly I end up sitting there with tons of notebooks, mountains of papers, thousands of recordings, 1 billion song sketches. I'm drowning in a deep sea of unfinished ideas. I've been collecting too much. Madness. And somewhere here, I feel like the crazy queen of garbage. Time to sort things up. Clean up the mess. The most difficult part of the process. Often I'm completely exhausted and confused and half crazy here. How on earth is it possible to clean up this mess? Where to start? Once again, I feel empty-headed and frustrated. I hate to clean up. I love it when things are in order, and sorted and make perfect sense, yes, but I think it's extremely hard to do it. I start the cleaning in the wrong order, focusing on the non-essential details, or simply not focusing at all. Okay, I'm going to read one more note from the famous diary here. I wrote like this. It feels like the moment I allow myself to think is so brief and quicker than a flash. I almost never have time to go inside of my own thoughts anymore. I am indescribable unfocused. It feels as if someone has thrown a grenade into my consciousness. Everything is here is just splitter. I would love to scope it up and glue it all together to a solid mass, but how? Every time I feel that ideas and thoughts are coming, I have an extremely bad habit or a tic, which forces me to cut off that thought. I close my ears and eyes and I go out and take a coffee instead of working. My life with kids has made my focus so short. I'm so used to being interrupted, so even if nobody interrupts me, I make sure to interrupt myself. Damn. All right, now somebody badly needs to rescue me and my project. I need somebody to scoop up the pieces and help me to glue them back together, to sort things up. The whole project looks like a messy battlefield. And here is where the truly magical moment happens. I've experienced that so many times, but still I can barely understand how it's possible. But from one day to another, you can go from a ghost town with abandoned squats, metaphors, to a fascinating city in neon lights, a masterpiece. Because with the help from somebody, all right, okay, listen. Because with the help from somebody not confused by the complicated patterns that usually arises when you look too close, too long, and too deep into the same spot, a whole album reveals. And it's almost magical, but you need the help from somebody from the outside. And when the album seems to be finished, or almost finished, that feeling brings me so much comfort and makes me so relaxed that I often just throw in a couple of more ideas. And these final ideas very often turn out to be the most essential and influential details of the whole work. Things I didn't know in the beginning that I wanted to tell. And in this case, with Demand the Impossible, this was how my dear street prophet was born. She came in the very, very last second. Well, this was my story about the rise and fall of creating, or the creative process. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I have questions, and then we have time for questions of you. There's almost as much time again for conversation. I'm warning you now, because I forgot yesterday to warn you, so you have time to formulate your thoughts. Thank you so much, Jenny. I was very struck by how similar what you're describing is to things that I recognize from the writing process, for instance. You started out, you wanted to be a writer in the beginning. You studied writing here at Skurups folkhögskola
Yeah.
some time ago.
I was just a child back then.
Practically a child, in case there's some 17-year-old or something in the audience from 19-year-old. But you chose another art form in the end. Do you think that this process is similar across disciplines, or are there things that are specific to music?
I think it can be similar, and I don't think it depends on what you're doing, but I think it depends on who you are and how you choose to work. Unfortunately, I work pretty much alone, which makes it, I mean, unfortunately in one way, and it's good in another way, but if you have a team, I think it's easier to, shear the project up and make it move forward quicker sometime.
You described that moment when you have to open your mess to somebody from the outside to see what shape it really has. How on earth do you dare? Like, to me, that's the worst. I can go on and fiddle with something forever. And it doesn't even have to be create like an artistic project at all. It could be just an article or just any kind of process that involves some kind of structure or any design project or something like that. I hate to show it to people, because what if they look at it and they don't find anything? Are you confident? Do you know that there's something there?
Yeah,
always?
Definitely.
So what's the clue? How do you know when there is something there?
I have to believe there's something there. Otherwise, I could, jump out of the window. I mean, if you work in the way as I do, you have to believe that what I'm doing is good. And I'm. It might have sounded like I'm a very depressed person. I'm not, but it's like it is a bloody struggle to, find what you want to say, because for sure I want to say something that I can live with for a long time, because you know that your work is going to live for quite a while. And for example, for me, I'm touring making a lot of shows, I need to sing, songs that I understand and believe in myself. So therefore, I mean, I have to struggle, but I believe in myself. I don't think that's not the problem.
You were talking about distractions. You mentioned children as one source of distractions. I think also, even for people who don't have children, we have a lifestyle now with so much media and so much
iPhone.
content. Yes.
The iPhone tick.
Exactly. I'm not sure. When you were speaking about that emptiness or that hollowness, and I thought, when have I experienced that real emptiness that enables that creativity last? And it's probably like 1996.
Yeah. Yeah, but emptiness it's not equal with silence or peacefulness at all. Emptiness is something else. You can be like Google, Hemnet.
Okay, but then I need to translate this a little bit, okay? Because that's great, because I can totally cover Google, Hemnet. So how do I find emptiness in that mind space?
But that's emptiness. That is emptiness. Google, Hemnet, Facebook. That is emptiness. That is not. I mean.
Yeah.
Because when you don't let your brain, I mean, your brain is much bigger than one might think sometime. And there are so many roads and like motorways and elevators and stuff in here that we never use. We use just a tiny bit of it, and we fill it with distractions. It's
But
like
the other parts
candy.
can still be working at the same time?
Sorry?
The other parts can still be working at the same time? Or
I mean, somehow it's working, but I mean, when you actually, when you step into, for example, the inspiration, when you take the step and go into it, then it's like the whole brain is revealing all these rooms that, for me, has been shut down. And that's what I was trying to explain. The stage before I step into the inspirational room is like everything is shut down and the intellect is completely erased, and yeah, like a room with the blinders down.
there's something very interesting. You said there's something in me that doesn't want to pick up the phone. I feel terribly lazy, and that fear of committing to your own idea. I wonder if that's not a very, like, that's maybe, I think that's the thing that you said that I'm going to think about the longest, because I've never heard anybody verbalize that before, but I recognize the feeling very much.
Yeah.
And many of us, of course, have jobs that have a creative element, but we also do very many other things. And I think one of the most soul-killing things about work is that quite often that phone is ringing and we have an idea that we could do something within the professional context. And just the feeling that if I answer this now, the only thing it's going to do is I'm going to have to work more hours for this thing that I believe in, and I still have to do all of these other things.
Yeah.
And there's no space, like the committing to something that you believe in is the price can become too high. I don't know, can you say something about those negotiations that you have with yourself at that moment? What is it that makes you say, okay, I'm going to have to do this, I'm going to have to pick up the phone?
Well, yeah, good question. But sooner or later, I always start a new project. I pick up the fucking phone and I listen. And I mean,
But maybe it's also a clue, actually. If you're in a professional environment where you feel that you can't ever afford to pick up the phone on your own ideas, then maybe you should really, really think about moving on to something else. Yeah. So you have that freedom, of course, that there's ultimately another album must come. So then that becomes the job as well. Cool. Do you guys have questions? We have microphone ninjas, and there's a gentleman right there. Yes, pass it down.
Better be a good question now, right? Yeah. So now my question is, like, in the startup world, when people are creating companies from scratch, it's very similar to the creative process of writing or music. And I recognize what you say in a lot of things, like the creative process of feeling doubt and everything. But in the startup world, the last 5 to 10 years, there's been this movement which is called lean startup, which is about as quickly as possible take your idea and show it to people to make sure that you're not working and wasting time on things that you shouldn't be working on. Which is a bit what you brought up, Johanna. It's really that is of course the pain, because somebody will laugh at your baby. And I think in the startup world there are mechanisms and things that have been designed now over 10 years how to do that. But I was asking, my question is really, in the music world, how early can you allow somebody to listen to a work? And I mean, what can they listen or even experience? I mean, do you show people do you let them listen to the street recordings you did? Like, I'm thinking about doing the song. Here are notes, scribbles, poems, and street recording. And here's my, 7 room with like all pictures and drawings and like craziness. It's like, or
Your
like
serial killer.
Exactly, your serial killer.
Workroom, yes, I see.
Or do you wait till it's like, here's a rough recording? Because the later you wait, the more you're gonna waste.
Yeah, I think it's important to have different people that you use in different, situations. For example, I have a friend that I'm talking a lot with about my lyrics with, so she can help me with that some. And with the music, it's sometimes you just program a bloody drum machine is like doom 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 doom, and then you sing upon it, and then it's almost ready. So sometimes that happens very quick and very like you don't really know what happened. But for me, the whole what I was talking about is universe, because I really want to build up a complete world around my album. That thing have to take some time, because otherwise I don't think I could say the very same things as I can when I have, challenged myself and worked with it for quite some time.
Another side of that is that, sorry, yeah? Not into the circle room then?
No. I wait with that, yeah.
So the flip side of this question is, of course, you work with quite complex sounds and productions. So when do you know it's ready?
I never know that.
Do you just say, okay, we have a release date, and that's when it has to happen?
That's where this cleaning up person is coming in and like, okay, now it's okay.
Certainly in the games world, I know that's what people say, that if you didn't have a shipping date, nobody would ever ship a game. Like, it's never going to be finished. That's awful also, because it means that you always have to compromise, always, with your vision. But maybe that's just a fact of life. Maybe you always do have to compromise with your vision. Do we have another question? Right there. Right here. Can you keep your hand up so we can see you? Yeah. Yes.
Hi.
Hey.
You're talking about creating a world, creating a city within the album. But today we have changed the way that how we listen to music. It's more like picking tunes like that. Is that disturbing to you, or what's your opinion about our new way of listening and picking out music like that when you're actually working with the whole piece?
Is the album dead?
Yeah, I'm very unfashionable in that sense, because for me not listening to the whole album in the right order. It's like, just watching the first scene of a movie and then not follow up with the rest of the scenes. So for me, I think, of course there's a lot of music that suits for this kind of Spotify, Google, where you just need to hear one song from that artist and one song. But, well, yeah, I think it's difficult. I really love the album as a, the concept, the story, the cover.
I always think that the 90s were yesterday, but of course that's not exactly true. So for instance, the entirety of your musical career has pretty much happened in this millennium and in this new reality. I guess back in the days when you were starting out, we were talking very much about sort of independent music as an alternative to the big companies, and now or to the big labels, and now of course that whole power dynamic has shifted, so that independent, like everybody is independent in a sense, and sometimes we look at the big labels and we see dinosaurs. When you started out, did you think that you were going to have a sort of traditional music career? Have you had to shift, or did you know from the very beginning that you're working in a new media landscape and with a new distribution model and all of these things?
When I started my career, I mean, that's pretty many years ago now. I mean, as you said, everything looked different. And now, where we are now, we're still in some kind of semi landscape where you still actually produce records, but nobody buys them. And people listen some here and there. And some people, of course, I mean, dig into it, but well, I don't know. For me, it's like I don't want to be bothered. I mean, no, but actually, I want to do my thing. I want to do my art, and I don't want to. Of course, we all have to move on. It's a process, everything we do, and you have to try new ways and so on. But I don't think there is an interesting alternative yet. I mean, just listening to one song here and one song there. That's not what I'm not here to just make one song. I'm here to make albums.
Let's say this then. Have you felt pressured to be more commercial and to think more of hit singles and this kind of thing? Have you had that sort of the liberty to do that art?
No, but I mean, I always considered myself as a very hittig person. I don't know the word in English. No, but I think I have so many songs that just kick ass and should be huge. But I think I'm a bit stubborn with my art, and it's like I don't really want to do things that I don't understand why I should do. And for sure, in this business, there are so many stupid things that you don't understand. It's like, what? Why would I ever do that? So I'm old enough to just step aside and do what I want to do.
That's very, very cool. Yeah. Do we have another question in the back over there? Yeah. Keep your hand up until you have the microphone, so we don't lose you. Yes.
Awesome. Didn't lose me. Hi.
Hi.
I'm, I guess, another voice from the startup world that is a different side of things. I actually wanted to say thank you for what you said. I find it quite inspirational. I'm currently fleeing the lean startup movement.
Thank you.
Because I just don't think that, if innovation and creation of newness were so easy, then everybody would be changing the world daily. And I think that I personally also, what you said totally resonates with my process. And being an entrepreneur, well, I found it difficult because, creative process is a creative process, and in the entrepreneur world, you're expected to build a company in 6 months because that's what media tells you. My question to you is actually more of a, I guess I have two quick ones about your process. First one is, when you first get that idea, you pick up the phone. That's like scary step number one. And then you're collecting and collecting and collecting.
Yeah.
And then that gets really comfortable because then you've suddenly figured out that you're collecting, you know where to look, and you know the people, and like you said, you know that map really well, and you can do it by heart and with your eyes closed in the dark. So my first question is, when do you tell yourself, now I need to leave this comfort zone that wasn't comfortable a few weeks ago, a few months ago, a year ago, and get to that step to, open your eyes again and go somewhere scary that you don't know again and start making stuff. And then my second question to you is, and I think it's interesting that you work with music, because music is also not it's our auditory sense, and it's not something you don't filter through it easily like we do visual things. So when you open up, once you stepped in and started creating that city, and you open it up to someone to say, hey, where's my album? How do you even go about showing them that, Do you show them your sketches? Like, what do you show them? And I'm asking this because I'm personally, I think, at that point where I need to go start building stuff, and I've been building stuff, and my version of that is a ton of science research, and I'm working in smell, so science research and a bunch of different fragrances and consuming. It's just a lot of stuff.
Thank
but
you.
it's not easy. Yeah.
Well, I start with the second question. I usually actually use show my sketches, and I'm not afraid of doing that, and I don't feel embarrassed at all. Even if, often when I sing my songs for the first 6, 7, 9, 8, 12 months, I sing in just, not with real words, just with what I call Swinglish, some words that sounds like English words.
You could
That's very
demonstrate
that is very embarrassing. I mean, but still, I recognize that is a quite good way of catching, the rhythms and something else, and then put the words into it. Anyway, yeah. So the sketches, I can easily show them early. And what was your first question?
How do you live when you're, for instance, in the collecting phase? That gets comfortable after a while. That's a good place to be. You can just continue collecting.
Yeah.
When that gets comfortable, how do you move into what's scary again?
Well, as I was saying before, when I collect a lot, and I often collect too much. So I don't have any order. And when I'm in that stage, I'm in a very uncomfortable zone.
Yeah, so that doesn't ever actually get quite. It becomes, so let's say you start collecting and you're doing the right thing. And when that starts getting uncomfortable because you just have too much, then you're forced into the next phase.
Yeah, definitely.
Did we have a question down here? Right here? Sorry, we need a microphone. Right here.
Yes. Hi.
Hi.
First of all, I love The Man the Impossible and everything else. And first of all,
Thank you so much.
I'm just here on third row dying. But anyways, it feels like talking about Facebook, Google, blah, blah, blah. It's very fragmented. But it feels like, and also talking about doing the albums and creating the world like a city, and it also feels like now when you talk about it, and I think about how I feel when I listen to your albums, I feel like I'm in your city. So
that's great.
Is it important for you to feel that you have a whole story to tell instead of just bits and pieces?
Yeah, exactly. That's right. That's the most important thing for me, to actually have a theme or a topic that I can stick to. I mean, I have released 3 solo albums, and all of them have different themes. And I found out that it's a very nice way of discovering new sides of very universal feelings. I mean, I definitely sing about being happy, being sad, being angry. I mean, all those kinds of things. But I try to put them into a special environment. And for Demand the Impossible, it was this kind of urban crazy society. Yeah. Thank
Briefly, yeah.
Yeah. So extremely boring question here, but again, if you're in the startup world, you're sort of moving between creativity and businesses. So when you are sort of finished with an album and you're in that period of like finding your next challenge and next thing that would threaten you and being scary, do you set up goals for yourself? Do you have like measurable things that you would say,
Yeah.
my next album is going to do this much, or it's played this much, or I mean any kind of goals, internal, external, or anything? Or is it more like go with the flow?
No, not go with the flow, actually not. Actually, when I was preparing this speech, I read my old diaries and notebooks and stuff like that. And I found, notes from very, very early on where I like structured up what I wanted to do with this record. I mean, long before I even had, a clue what I wanted to tell, but I somehow knew what I wanted to do. Yeah, I think I have quite specific goals, but then of course you rearrange and change, and you never know until you're completely done with it what it became.
Most of us are measured on goals that have some kind of numerical aspect. Do you ever think of it, those kinds of things? It has to sell this much, or my tour must be this long, or I must reach this many people, or this many plays.
Well, of course. I mean, I want to live.
Eating is nice, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I know that records doesn't really sell these days, but of course, I believe in what I'm doing, and therefore I want many people to have the chance to listen to what I'm saying and doing and see my shows. And I mean, of course I want to make some money. Still, I haven't made any money.
Yeah.
But I want to do that. I want to have a nice fucking car.
Right there.
Good morning, Jenny. Thank you so much for taking us through your process. I'm here in the middle.
Right there. Yeah.
So I was wondering, I think it was Håkan Hellström, another Swedish artist, who said that once I worked with an album or a song for several months, I just look back and say that on my new thing, my baby that I'm about to launch, that, well, this is nothing really. I mean, can you feel the same thing when you've been through the creative process and finally got the product?
Yeah.
Can you feel the same thing? And also, can you feel with your music that it still needs to evolve somehow? That you have, I mean, you're boxed in a certain format of the final product. But I guess as a touring artist, you can always, change the song as it moves on. But do you feel the need also to perhaps, I need to make this song, but in a completely different version because it means a different thing to me 5 years later or something?
Okay, yeah, sure. I need to make new versions. That was your question, was it? Yeah. Of course, it's super important to, I mean, when I play now on this Demand the Impossible tour, I also play some songs from the old albums, and I have forced these pop songs to suit this new costume that I have. So therefore I have made completely new versions. Yeah.
We have a lady over there. And then possibly one more question after that. Yeah. Let's start here. Yes.
Hi, Jenny.
Hi.
It's wonderful to hear your story. I'm fascinated. And I wanted to ask you something, because obviously you're an artist and critique of your albums and of your work is clearly influential to the perception of your music. I've just had like an amazing creative 2 years and decided after doing lots of other things to produce a series of books and illustrate them and write them, and actually I've done an EP of songs to go with the book. And I had this sort of literally just evolution in my life, which was fabulous. But obviously it's out there now, and there is critique being written and there are reviews being written. Some are really wonderful, some are not. How do you manage to sustain your creative process without listening to all the noise that surrounds the critique of your work? Because clearly I'm finding now when I sit down and try and produce something fresh in my vein of creativity, it's impossible not to hear the sounds around you.
Yeah, but I think the beautiful thing of working as I do is the first stage. I mean, where I'm in the creative process, I don't meet so many people. I don't, I'm not around so many people. I'm not, you can't read about me in the news because nobody thinks about me because I've stepped back when I'm in my creative process. But then when the album releases, then you get a public again. And I think the interesting thing is what happens when you actually out there in the public with your work that you've been holding like this for some time for yourself, is that you have to force yourself to actually you have to describe your work for other people, and that I think that's very interesting because that makes me understand what I actually did. So I think what happened when I released Demand the Impossible was that very late. I mean, the record had came out and everything, but then I started to talk about it, and the more I talked about it, the more I was talking about the political parts of it. When I started to work with the album, I thought that the album would be about being sick and being a soul and body, like a person who have managed to survive cancer, for example. But then it turned out to be this album about the society and the political things. Well, I'm not answering your question.
Do you read reviews?
I realize I'm just talking. I'm sorry.
Do you read reviews?
Sorry.
Do you read your reviews? Of your
Yes,
albums
some
and
of
gigs?
them. Yeah.
Does that affect you at all?
I mean, often they have to write so quick and so little. So you're like, was that all? But yeah, I mean, of course, I'm happy if somebody really loves it, of course, and if you see that the person have actually that he has understood what I was trying to tell, that makes me happy.
Last question, right there. Yeah.
Hello. Thank you for sharing your inner thoughts with us. We are so grateful for that.
Thank you.
I think my question has to do with your answer to the previous question.
I'm sorry about that answer.
No,
I was like,
thank
wow.
you. So maybe you have already answered these questions. I was curious about your theme. Do you start with your theme, or does it come later when you see the whole puzzle?
Well, I kind of start with a theme, definitely. This kind of, the ringing I was talking about, the phone that kept calling, often comes like some kind of just a vague feeling that I wanna write about the body. I want to write about the city, but what the fuck am I going to tell anybody about this? So first it comes very, vague. And then I start to, dig into it and start to collect and start to understand what I'm actually, what I'm after. So then okay, this album is about, I'm cooking, like. But as I tried to say to her before, it's usually when it's complete done out in the stores and I'm in interview situations that I actually can understand what the whole album was about when I'm out of the creative process.
You know what? I think that's so interesting because that's something that's lacking, actually. Most of us, when we finish a project or release a product or something like that, we don't actually have to go out and do interviews and tell people about this in that way and answer questions. I heard yesterday in a panel that YouTube was, or in an interview, that YouTube was originally intended to be a dating site, and also that. And then also I know it's a story that's often told in Finland because of Nokia, is that when SMS text messaging was invented, they almost didn't put it in the phones because nobody would ever use that, obviously. Like, why would you painstakingly type a message with that very bad keyboard, one letter at a time? Nobody would ever do that, right? So they didn't want to use that technology. Sometimes we build these things or create something, and that doesn't even have to be in the art world. We never stop and look at what we've actually built. And quite often when projects fail, it's because we're selling the thing we thought we built instead of the user experience that we actually have, or the need, that the thing that the audience will understand.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
You know what? We're out of time. Thank you so much for this luxury of all of this access.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to meet you.
Thanks.
Goodbye.